and we'll see if we can get to that sometime this week.
Yeah. Just about to go live over Aggie Radio, so we'll welcome those joining us via Aggie Radio here in just a moment. But how about you gentlemen go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Well, so I'm Jason Walker, sports editor at the Utah Statesman. Occasionally do stuff with Aggie Radio.
Daniel Hansen, senior writer for the Utah Statesman on the sports desk. Also do some stuff with Aggie Radio and then also at USU Athletics. Broadcasting a couple of games for Utah State women's soccer, volleyball. Softball is going to be starting up here pretty soon, so you'll see me and Jaden on that quite a bit over the course of their season.
And I am Jaden Johnson. Thanks for tuning in. I'm the sports editor here at the Statesman. Or I'm the sports manager.
Yeah, that's my job.
Sports. We call things differently.
You demoting yourself and promoting me?
Yeah, you got it. All right. We're just about to go live. You can see the control panel here, if it'll stop being glitchy.
Never.
And welcome on in to all of you, those of you joining us via Aggie Radio. We're here in Las Vegas, Nevada for the Mountain West Conference Basketball Tournament. Utah State is down here in Vegas. The men's team taking the court tomorrow afternoon. All of the action, of course, here on Aggie Radio. We're also live via Facebook Live on the Utah Statesman Facebook Live page. So thanks for joining us. Those of you joining either way, we're here to break down the tournament for you, break down the women's game yesterday and the men's game coming up tomorrow. I'm Jaden Johnson, joined here by a couple of great dudes, Daniel Hansen and Jason Walker. But to kick things off, let's dig right into it. Let's talk about the ugly loss by the Utah State women's team yesterday. I mean, all three of us were there. We were all able to experience it. Definitely not the way the women's team wanted to end the season.
Well, it wasn't really an ugly loss as much as it was just an ugly season. Definitely underwhelming results for the Aggies this season. They were picked 6th in the preseason poll for the Mountain West and come to the Mountain West tournament, ranked 9th in the conference, and lose to Air Force 68-54 in just a brutally lethargic performance.
Yeah, I mean, being down by 14, that's almost generous enough. Like, they were down by, I think, around 20 for a good chunk of the game, and it was just ugly. Like, I was talking to you guys, and you can say, I can live with just being a not as good team and just maybe a bad night shooting, but it just looked bad, and that was the frustrating thing, is you feel like this team has some talent, and they just didn't quite live up to that talent, because we know they can do better. So I got to watch them against San Jose State, and they looked glorious. They looked like a great team. And then that team apparently stayed in Logan.
Yeah.
Well, big reason we do at least have to explain. Shannon Duffy, one of the team's core players, leading rebounder by far, and then a really good passer on the offense, left with an ACL sprain against UNLV in the final game of the season. So she was unavailable in the Mountain West tournament, and the team just really struggled without her on offense and on defense. Air Force, especially in that first quarter, got into the lane at will and then kicked out to open shooter after open shooter. And the Falcons aren't usually a good three-point shooting team, but they nailed basically everything in that game, and it just quickly got out of hand. And after that, Utah State just did not have the offensive firepower to really match that.
Yeah, no question. I mean, Delphine being out was big, but at the same time, she was out in the UNLV game. She played 90 seconds in that game, and the team still really hung in there tight with a very good rebounding team. Now, UNLV, they're a good post. They're a good rebounding team. I mean, they're Brooke Powell. She probably should have been the player of the year, in my opinion, and she's their post player. Fantastic player for UNLV, and they didn't have any trouble handling her, yet they go against a weak post team in Air Force. And they were out-rebounded pretty bad, 29-25, but that's generous because it was really worse than that throughout most of the game. It kind of cleaned up at the end. It was just kind of a poor effort to me, especially in the post for Utah State. And so that was the biggest disappointment for me. But at the same time, I mean, it's a young team. They've got an off-season now to work on everything. They did finish, I think, obviously not the last game, but the last 3-4 games, that was probably their best stretch of the season. So that's a positive for sure.
And then going into next season, as we were kind of talking with Coach Finkbeiner after the game in the post-game interviews, they're not going to be able to have the excuse of a young team next season. You're going to have a lot of juniors on that roster, a couple seniors as well. And so we should see some improvement just from experience. Hopefully they have this entire offseason to kind of hone their crafts, and maybe come out next year. Obviously, I don't think we can really expect them to really contend for a Mountain West title, but I think you should see a much more competitive team that gives some more people fits in the conference.
Yeah, no question. Now moving forward, because it was a tough loss, and that's the end of the season for the women's team, and definitely a tough pill to swallow. We're all bummed about it, but at the same time, it's over, and so we want to move forward. We want to start looking at the men's game that's coming up. But let's take a look at the Mountain West Conference All-Conference Awards, because those were just recently announced. The women's team entirely left out. I mean, you've got they announce a Player of the Year, a Defensive Player of the Year, Newcomer of the Year, Sixth Player of the Year, Freshman of the Year, Coach of the Year, and then your All-Conference first, second teams, your defense team, your freshman team. Not one Aggie on all of those lists, which kind of tells you about how the season was for the Aggies. There just weren't many players that actually stood out this year. I mean, you had Olivia West had a good season. Rachel Brewster had a decent season. Shannon Duffy had a decent season, but nobody that was really worth, I think, garnering by an individual performance standpoint high praises.
Yeah, it was a little frustrating because I think last year we had several good players. I think Eliza West, I believe she won Freshman of the Year last year.
She was Freshman of the Year.
And then Rachel Brewster was a sophomore then. She had a really good season. So you think that maybe they would have been able to take a step up, maybe win some of these individual awards, but it seemed like everybody just regressed a little bit. Mm-hmm. And the whole team did as they had a worse record, so it's just a little frustrating there.
And then last year you had Shannon Duffy on the all-freshman team as well. Of course, this year not really many freshmen to pad that, to add to the all-freshman team. The one player I would argue that really should have gotten some consideration and I think should have made one of those teams is Deja Mason on the all-defense team. Deja led the Mountain West far and away in blocks. She only played about 17 minutes a game. She did dominate. I'm not talking blocks per game. I'm talking total blocks, playing 17 minutes per game, and she dominated that category. She is a good post player, a pretty good rebounder for what the Mountain West has. The player that won the player that was at the center position on the all defense team, Brooke Johnson, who's a great player. Powell, Brooke Powell, who's a great defensive player. But I think Deja should have been in that spot.
Here's a question for you too, because Deja Mason, you could definitely make an argument for the all defensive team. I want to know, what do you think is a bigger snub on the defensive teams? Her not making it, or Sam Merrill not making it on the men's side?
Now, that's a good question as we look at the men's teams, which were just announced today, literally hours ago. That's quite the snub.
You have 6 players on the all-defense team for the men. You have Chandler Hutchinson from Boise State, Deshaun Taylor from Fresno, several guys from Nevada, Lindsey Drew and Cody Martin, Antonio Jackson from New Mexico, and Alan Herndon from Wyoming. Sam Merrill has had some of the toughest assignments in the entire league.
No question.
And even Chandler Hutchinson, one of the best offensive players in the conference, he shut down for large portions of the Aggies' victory over the Broncos and Logan several weeks ago. And he's nowhere on the all-defensive team. That's one of the biggest snubs, I think, on either for both men's and women's.
I think it just comes down to the fact the Aggies didn't do well this year, and that unfortunately is the way a lot of voters go, is even if you do have such individual performances you talked about where he had drew all the toughest assignments. If there's a guy that we needed to guard, he was the guy who did it. But we didn't win, so maybe they just kind of saying, well, he didn't do so good. Sometimes that's just the way voters go, and like it or hate it, that's kind of what happens.
That is true. All 5 of those teams, I think that's actually the top 5 seeds in the Mountain West.
Yeah.
So, it fits.
Success goes, it goes along with the success. For those of you that haven't been able to see the teams yet, we're going to have a post about it up on Utah Statesman, usustatesman.com. You'll find that on our social media, so we're going to have that up here momentarily. And that will just talk about all the teams. It'll talk especially about Utah State's honorees, which we'll discuss in just a moment. But the Player of the Year goes to Caleb Martin from Nevada. That was a little bit of a surprise. I like Caleb Martin, but I thought it was going to be Chandler Hutchinson. So that was a little bit of a surprise to me. Defensive player Cody Martin, also Nevada. The Twins pickup player and defensive player of the year. Newcomer of the year Caleb Martin. So we're going to stick with the Martin family here. Sixth man of the year Alex Hobbs from Boise State. Freshman of the year Brandon McCoy. No surprise there from UNLV. And Coach of the Year, no surprise here, Eric Musselman from Nevada. So I feel like they mostly got that right. First team, Chandler Hutchinson from Boise State, Deshaun Taylor from Fresno State, Jordan Caroline from Nevada, Caleb Martin from Nevada, and Justin James from Wyoming. So
I think there's a couple.
Any that you would argue there?
I think Player of the Year, I think a lot of people, it's a coin flip between Chandler Hutchison and Caleb Martin. I think you can respect both of those votes. I think another one that kind of, I think you could make a coin flip. Of course, Eric Musselman, you can't argue that he should be Coach of the Year. But Paul Weir, the job that he's doing at New Mexico is astounding. This is a team that struggled a lot in the out-of-conference play, was not really looking that impressive. It looked like one of the easier wins, quote-unquote, that teams would have in the Mountain West. And then they come out and they just locked up the 3 seed for the tournament.
I could agree with that. And when they played at Utah State, they had 6 scholarship players that traveled with them. And they won. They won the game. Or just about won the game.
Yeah, and I think with Nevada, they were handed, Cody and Caleb Martin just came in this year. They transferred here, so you wonder a lot of their success probably tied to that. But
which is tied then to the Eric Musselman. But
still.
It's all part of the Coach of the Year candidacy. I agree with what you say. I think that my vote would still go to Musselman. But there's definitely an argument there for Weir. I mean, a lot of good coaches in the Mountain West, really. There's no shortage this year of great coaches. Second team, that's going to be Cody Martin, Malik Pope, Shakur Justin, Brandon McCoy, Hayden Dalton. No real surprises there. I think Brandon McCoy may actually be the best player in the conference, but just, I don't know, because of his team's success and because of the role that he plays on that team, I understand second team. Third team, Bryson Williams from Fresno State, Kendall Stevens from Nevada, Anthony Mathis from New Mexico. And here we go, Kobe McEwen and Sam Merrill from Utah State, both getting third team honors. So congrats to Kobe and Sam. Where would you have put those two players?
Well, I think Kobe on the third team, I was hoping to expect a little bit more of a breakout season from Kobe. I think a lot of the injuries kind of derailed some of the development that he was able to do. But I think Sam was just so great this season. Like, you can say Sam is better than Kobe at this point. We were all looking to Kobe to be the leader of this team. That was Sam this year. It was his team. And I really think he should have made second team. I mean, I'm not terribly disappointed that he's on the third team, but I think he could have made that bump up onto the second team just for his performance and how much he's had to lead this team that has had so many struggles.
I can't argue that. I mean, I feel like I understand them both being third team. I personally would have probably put Sam on the second team because you said it. Maybe, I don't know if he's the better player than Kobe. I don't know. Not that it matters. I just feel like he had a better season. He was so solid, so consistent all year long. I would have put him on the second team. Kobe's probably right where he should be on the third. No honorable mention for Utah State. That's Nick Carvaccio, Antonio Jackson, Jalen McDaniels, and Ryan Wellage. Those are the honorable mention players. Last year, Sam was honorable mention, and Kobe was second team. So a little bit of a shift there, and they met in the middle.
And I think they're both, right in kind of the right spot. I mean, you look at the second team, I don't really see another player that I for sure think Sam Merrill is better than. So, I mean, it's tough making these teams because you're dealing with the best of the best.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to kind of nitpick this. I do think the one thing that we should be pointing out here, though, is you have Brandon McCoy, who's his own monster. He's likely going to be a first-round pick in the NBA draft, this upcoming draft.
No question.
Terrific player. Aside from him, Bryson Williams is the only other sophomore on any of those three teams.
That's true. That's a good point. I mean, then yeah.
And you have McEwen and Merrill. I think we kind of undersell, some of their youthfulness a little bit, just because, they've now been here 2 years. We expect them to be amazing. But basketball at the D1 level is a really difficult thing to do. And for them both to be all Mountain West selectees as sophomores, we're looking at probably 2 more years of both of these guys. There's a really good foundation for Utah State basketball for the upcoming seasons. And it, of course, starts with those two guys.
Yeah. So tomorrow afternoon, Utah State begins, the men's team, I should say, begins their Mountain West tournament play, and they're going to be taking on Colorado State. That's going to be at 2:30 Mountain Time.
It's going to be
2:30 Pacific, or I don't know.
We're in Pacific time. We got all the times mixed
up. The time zones are screwy.
2:30 Mountain Time.
2:30 Mountain Time. right here on Aggie Radio, so you can tune in Aggie Radio. Scotty G's down here in Vegas to have the call for that. But 2:30 Mountain Time, 1:30 will be the pregame show. Let's take a look at that matchup. So these teams have only played once this season. Typically in a season, there's only 2 teams in the Mountain West that you'll play once. Colorado State happened to be that for Utah State this year, and it was in Logan, and Colorado State won. I remember just being absolutely shocked at that game. I was in Colorado calling the women's game, but I got done. I looked at the score, and it just seems a little bit inexplicable that Utah State lost that game. What was the feel about that game, and what do you think will be different now?
Honestly, I think that game was more just about Utah State not showing up more than I think it was about Colorado State really taking out and winning that one. The biggest thing from that game was, one, Prentice Nixon, guard for Colorado State. Another one of those snubs from the All Mountain West teams. I think he should have at least gotten an honorable mention. That dude's a stud. Like, this is a guy
He's
very
fantastic.
early in the game, took a really bad fall. He already had some knee sprain, and he re-aggravated that. And then he was hobbling up and down the court the rest of the entire game, and he still managed to just drop, I think, 30 points on us. Like, he absolutely dominated that game. Utah State had several chances to possibly come back into that game and steal the victory, but Prentice Nixon just shot after shot after shot after shot. And he's the one thing that I'm nervous about facing Colorado State again in the tournament.
I was very surprised that he didn't make one of the, at least an honorable mention.
Yeah, I think part of it was he did have an injury. It was shortly after the Utah State game, or the injury in the Utah State game. He left a couple games after. But he had 26 points, 4 steals, I think was a big thing for him, and then he shot 8 of 14 from the field, 4 of 6 from 3. So not only was he scoring, he had 26 points on 14 shots. So, you know, a pretty big game for him. And then Utah State, they only scored 31 points in the first half.
Yeah.
In the second half, they actually outscored Colorado State, but it was 44-43 in the second half.
Yeah.
So
and one of the biggest things also with that game, too, is where in the season that was for Utah State. For those who can't remember, this was right after they had beaten Fresno State in overtime at home, where they came back from 10 down in the last 4 minutes and then went on the road and won at UNLV. Mm-hmm. So that was a point of the season where we thought this team was going to really gel together and really make a really good run. They lost at home to Colorado State in that shocker of a game, and then after that lost 2 straight at Nevada and at Boise, and then came back home, lost at Wyoming. It was one of those real bad stretches of the season. And it really started, I think, with Colorado State. They've had a couple of those games this season where they played a team, I think, that I would say Utah State's better than, on paper at least. But for whatever reason, they don't come out, they don't show it. And I really think that hurts the team psychologically. And it takes them several games to get over that. And I think that's exactly what's happened the past couple of games before the UNLV game to end the season.
Yep. Well, Colorado State comes into the tournament. They're ice cold. I mean, they've lost 11 of 12. 11 of their last 12. Let that sink in for a minute. Of course, a big part of that, Coach Larry Eustace stepping aside as the head coach. He was first put on administrative leave, and that's right at the beginning of this losing streak. And then after being put on administrative leave, steps down. So he's no longer with the team. And, of course, you shake it up like that in the middle of a season, especially a great coach. I feel like Larry Eustace is a great coach. He steps aside. And then, since then you've got losses to San Diego State, New Mexico, UNLV, Air Force. 2 losses to Air Force, Nevada, Wyoming, basically everyone in the Mountain West Conference. Their one win during that stretch coming against San Jose State
At home,
a 90-79 victory. So, as much as a Utah State fan, I would be nervous about Utah State having to play Colorado State again, a team that came to the Spectrum, disrespected the Aggies, and really made light work of playing Utah State at home. As much as that makes me nervous, I think that the fact that this team is so cold and has just been so discombobulated by the loss of their coach also gives me quite a bit of comfort.
Yeah, I think the only way that we can see Colorado State coming in and winning this is, you mentioned Prentice Nixon. He went out for a little bit, and he's really only come back into form the last 2 games at 27 points. But even then, they still lost both those games to Nevada and New Mexico. So really, that's really the only chance that they've managed to somehow draw some momentum from that, or at least especially him. But I think just momentum is the biggest thing going into the tournament, and Colorado State has none of that, and Utah State has a little bit with that win over UNLV, kind of stopping the bleeding from the the 2 games they lost to San Jose State and Air Force.
Yeah, and it's also with Colorado State. It's not even just losing Stacy. They had an interim coach that was from Stacy staff, and he left after that. So they're on this dude who's like never been the head coach anywhere in college basketball. Mm-hmm. He's like 26 years old. He's super young, and this is the situation he's thrown into. So they've really struggled like that. So it's a really good opportunity. I mean, you'd hate for any university to have those problems, but for Utah State, you're looking at a really nice path to the second round.
And there were players talking about quitting the team after Stacy left, and players boycotting practice.
Yeah,
I mean, the entire team boycotted practice. It was really a mess. They seem to have started to come back from it a little bit. I mean, at the end of the season, they cleaned things up a little bit.
Even then, like
they just kept on losing. Kept on losing. And I just think that there's a team that is going to be a one and done in the tournament, no matter who they play.
I think they're still dangerous, I think. I mean, you look, they had a game at Nevada on February 25th, and they stayed really competitive in that game, and it actually looked like they might steal it. Prentice Nixon, I think that was one of his games that he kind of reemerged onto the scene. Right after that, though, they went down to play New Mexico at home, and they got blown out. They gave up 108 points to New Mexico. They were down, I think, by 40 at one point in that game. So I think that it's going to depend a lot on like which kind of Rams team shows up a bit. You could get the one that played against Nevada, and then I think Utah State might have some problems. But if Utah State plays the way they did against UNLV, there should be a second game for the Aggies in this tournament.
Yeah, and a lot of it comes down to just when the Aggies are, when they've got the hot hand or the hot hands, when people are shooting well, they win. When you look at the Colorado State, just how many points they've given up. 108 to New Mexico, 92 to Nevada, 87 to Boise State, 86 to Fresno, 79 to San Jose State. So, like, the last time they allowed under 80 points was to San Jose State, and they almost made it to that mark.
We'll check out some of these rankings from the conference, from the Mountain West. Colorado State ranks dead last in points per game in conference play, 82.3. They rank dead last in free throw attempts per game. They've given up 419. They rank second to last in three-point attempts. They've struggled. Like, defensively has been one of the parts where they've really fallen apart. That's where you really lose a coach. When you lose a coach, offensively, if you have players that can get buckets, they're going to get buckets. Defensively, it's so much a cohesive effort. If you do not have details put down, you do not know who's going to roll where, who's going to be bringing the help defense. That's where the coach really comes into play. So with Stacy out, that defense is just tanked.
Another thing that I don't believe we've mentioned yet, J.D. Page, their third leading scorer on the Colorado State team. I mean, he plays 32 minutes per game. I don't know if he's going to play or not. He's been suspended by the team. No clarification as to why, and it's an indefinite suspension. So he could be back, could be out. My guess is they'll probably bring him back. It's tournament time. He's been out for a couple of games, but I don't know how serious it is. So J.D. Page may not be in there. He's averaging 10 points per game. I mean, rebounding, he's a decent rebounder. Pretty good passer, 58 assists this season. So that's definitely a player to watch out for that they're not likely going to have in their starting lineup. I mean, he started 22 games for the team this season. So we'll see how that goes without him. But worth noting.
That changes a lot. If he does play, it's going to change a little bit of the game plan. But even looking back to the game, Colorado State won in the Spectrum. J.D. Page, he had 5 points and then 4 assists. So, like, you can see he's an integral part of, like, moving the offense around. But the big thing with that is going to be then Merrill probably would have to come off of Prentice Nixon and then move on to J.D. Page.
Yeah.
That would be the real key difference in this game. If Merrill has one of those shutdown games where he can take out one of Colorado State's players all by himself, I mean, I don't see any way Colorado State can take this game.
All right, so we got a few minutes left. Let's start to wrap this thing up. First, let's go with our predictions for the game. So a score and which team you think is going to win. I know Jason loves score predictions, so we'll let you start.
I'm not good with score predictions. I've only had a good one once in my life, but honestly,
so hold him to it.
Hold me to it. All right. So the problem is that Utah State's either going to shoot lights out or they're going to not show up. So really, I just think probably just like 88 to 72 Utah State. I'll just throw that out there. I think that
It's a 16-point victory for the Aggies. I like it.
yeah, I think they're going to score a lot of points. I think just we'll see what the defense does.
I like it. Daniel.
Usually the Aggies, when they come into the tournament, they've got kind of this lesser opponent. They've been able to kind of force their will pretty well. I remember last year against San Jose State, that was definitely the case. I think you'll see kind of the same thing here. Colorado State's struggling, especially defensively, and I think Utah State finds a rhythm. I'm going to say about 84-64.
84-64, so 20-point game.
Don't feel so bad about
You guys are confident. 16-point, 20-point. I'd love to see that. I hope it happens. I'm going to call it a little bit closer. I do think the Aggies win. It's hard to pick a team that's lost 11 of their last 12 in Colorado State. As bad as Utah State did kind of close out the season, lost to San Jose State, lost to Air Force. Those are inexcusable, but I do think that the Aggies have a more talented team at this point. And so I think that the Aggies come in, they win it. I think it'll be a little bit closer, though. I'm going to say 80. I'm winging it. I think 85-78. We'll go with that. That's what's going to be the score. So, before we close out, I also want to get this from you. Who's going to win the Mountain West Conference? Who's your underdog for the tournament that could swoop in and win it all? And which team has the best logo and colors?
I'm gonna let Jason start off on that, but I got some thoughts here.
I don't.
We'll say since we're in Vegas, for the underdog, since we're in Vegas, which team would give you the best odds?
See, I don't know. So I think just obviously the easy choice for who's going to win is probably Nevada. I think they're just the best team, clearly. In terms of underdogs, I mean, I don't know.
So Nevada. Just Nevada.
Nevada. I don't know.
Nobody else has a chance?
Yeah, we saw the other day UNLV has 150-1 odds to win the Mountain West.
That's for the national championship.
That was the national championship?
UNLV's odds for anything are just ballooned out of proportion
on UNLV.
because everybody here bets on UNLV.
So actually, those are the worst odds because they're not. They're like one of the worst in the conference, or like they're middle of the conference, below average. But what were the other ones?
Just who's your underdog? We'll stick with that.
Either Boise State or New Mexico. I want to say Boise State just because they have Hutchinson. When you have a good player and he can get hot, that means so much for a tournament. When you make a tournament run, it's usually tied to that one player. Go back to any hot team in the tournament.
And quickly, player. Best logo, best colors in the conference.
I don't know about best logo. I really like San Diego State's black and red. Ooh. I think it looks pretty good. I don't really like their logo.
All right.
But, I'm not sure.
Daniel.
Okay. Obviously, the favorite's Nevada. They're the best team. I mean, they have the...
I'm not asking for the favorite. I'm asking who's going to win it.
They're going to win it.
Okay.
They've got the player of the year.
There we go.
They've got the defensive player of the year. They've got so many weapons offensively. It's tough for any team to really stop them completely. You're going to have to outshoot Nevada to win them. Given that, the underdog is going to be the opposite side of the bracket. That is where Utah State is.
San Jose State's the other side of the bracket.
If you really want to get an underdog, if you want to get a good payout, I think Utah State is the team to go for. Just because if they do get hot, they can actually hang with people. And you look at the path that they'd have. Colorado State, which we've already talked about. Next game would be Boise State.
No, you have one glaring problem. San Jose State's on the same side of the bracket.
Okay, that is a very good point. But we wouldn't face them until the semis, and they're not getting to the semis. I think that's your big long shot bet. If you're going for an underdog that you really think has a chance still, New Mexico. I think Paul Weir's a terrific coach. They've got some good players down there. They're making a lot of good improvements this season. And then you look, they're going to play probably Wyoming in the second round. And then you see, they're going to have a tough road. They'll play probably Boise State, then Nevada. But I think Utah State does have a shot. I want to put in one word here so it's on record. D'Angelo Isby is the X factor of this tournament, in my opinion.
Okay, it's on record.
He's been very, very much improved over the second half of the season. Offensively, he's been good, making good decisions. Defensively, he's become much better than we saw in the beginning of the season. If he can actually provide a good spark off the bench, that is a very good improvement for Utah State.
And quickly, best logo, best colors.
Okay, this one was the really tough one I was trying to stall for.
Come on.
I'm gonna go with New Mexico. I think I think they're a little bit underrated. I do like the Lobo. I think I'm also kind of factoring a little bit of the pitness with that as well.
I like the pit, but I like the arena, but that's it. I hate the logo. I hate the colors. Lobos it's a cool name.
Yeah.
Anyway, Nevada's going to win it. They're going to win every game by 15 plus. Mark it down. I'm dead serious. They're going to win every game by 15 plus. If I was to choose an underdog, New Mexico, I totally agree with you. New Mexico's a good team. I mean, I think if any team has a chance at upsetting them, it would be the Lobos. And then best logo, best colors. I was going to say San Diego State. I love the logo. I love the colors. But I'm kind of leaning more towards Nevada. I like the dark blue and the silver. That's nice.
When I was watching the women's game, with the Nevada, it looked like
terrible uniforms.
It almost looked like our colors, like that. It was like kind of gray that you see sometimes on our football players, or just some other teams, like just that gray.
Yeah.
I almost thought it was Utah State for a moment.
Can we all just agree San Jose State's the worst?
I really am not a whole Wyoming.
Oh, okay.
The brown and yellow.
That's at least iconic, though. I don't know.
Well, San Jose State, they got like the blue and the yellow. That's not a terrible combination.
Air Forces are also.
There's some bad. Anyway, thanks for tuning in to our broadcast here on Facebook Live as well as Aggie Radio. We're going to have all the action this week on Aggie Radio. You can catch the game tomorrow. Again, that's 2:30 Mountain Time, 1:30 for the pregame show. Scotty G. So tune in for that. We're also going to have We're going to have a pregame show, I believe, on Facebook Live here. We'll have a postgame show with the press conference as well. So keep following along on Facebook Live. Follow us on Twitter at Utah Statesman, at Jaden Johnson with a 0 instead of an O in the last O.
At the Grand Danny. Again, also send us if you have anything you want me to eat in Vegas and it meets the FDA guidelines, give it to us and we'll see if it wins our poll that we'll be running later in the week.
And Jason, what's your Twitter handle?
So it's at the Jaywalk67. Pretty straightforward. So
we'll have all the action for you. Thanks again for tuning in. This has been a Aggie Radio production
with the Utah State. USU Student Media production.
USU Student Media production.
Nailed it.
Thank you for tuning in. We'll be here in Vegas all week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Go Aggies.